All right.
All right.
Our
Now, if
webinar is live.
sorry, okay, let's get started with the second webinar on becoming a successful innovator series. This webinar is focused on the CoStar method for pitching your brilliant ideas. I'm Laszlo Jurfi, your instructor, and the person keeping the technology running and the Q&A flowing is Jessica Day. You probably heard her if you checked in earlier. She's the head of marketing for IdeaScale. She's also in the midst of a wild world tour and is actually helping support us all the way from Amsterdam. Anyway, IdeaScale is one of the world's premier idea management platforms, and I've had the pleasure of collaborating with them for many years now, and I appreciate all her help on these adventures. As I mentioned before, this is the second in our series. The first one focused on perfecting your brilliant ideas and developing them from scratch into something that you could determine its value, because of course anybody who's had a brilliant idea recognizes the fundamental truth that, one, I got to determine whether my idea is actually of value, and two, I got to be able to pitch it or present it in a way that's compelling to get people to support my idea. So that's why we're talking about perfecting and pitching. This one, of course, though, is focused on the perfecting side of things. Yeah. Let me do a little bit of introduction to myself, and then I'm going to jump into the content. So my name is Laszlo Jurfi. I'm the president of the Enterprise Development Group. We're an international business strategy and innovation consulting firm headquartered in Silicon Valley. We have worked with the best in the world, companies that have led their way in their industries and leaders who are committed to continuing their success. You will see many different kinds of industries and people from all over the world. Maybe some of you even had breakfast at Panera before you came in to watch this webinar. Whether you're an entrepreneur, an employee, the purpose of this webinar is to help you effectively champion your brilliant ideas. We want you to benefit from the tools and the expertise we've gained over the years. You know, we recognize that innovation is more than a flash of inspiration or just a bit of creative thinking. It's about people like yourself creating new value and launching and implementing new ideas. Our Launchpad, which is sort of the foundation for our work, is supported by our proven methodology, which I mentioned earlier, CoStar. If you haven't done so, I recommend you review the first course so you get comfortable with CoStar and its potential. But recognize that these core steps are the path you need to follow to take your initial idea all the way into some place where it can be proven and ultimately funded and implemented into the world to create value. So why are we talking about sort of pitching, and what are the challenges involved in that? Because if you think speaking out and sharing an idea is easy, let's look at the words of George Jessel. The human brain is a wonderful organ. It started to work as soon as you were born and doesn't stop until you get up to deliver a speech. In fact, pitching your idea to people you do not know, who do not know your idea or your goals in a very short time period is not an easy task. Unfortunately, a great idea poorly explained ceases to appear great. Delivering a crisp and compelling pitch takes planning and practice. You know, and those who do it well distinguish themselves from the pack and dramatically increase the likelihood that their ideas will be embraced. Through this second webinar, we will guide you through the how-tos of developing, delivering an excellent pitch. So what are some of the objectives? First, we will explore your skills as a presenter and the empathy needed in order to pursue your audience. We'll identify the communication traps to avoid and the tips to use to get your message across. We will help define the essential ingredients and the structure of your CoStar pitch. And together we will discover how to prepare yourself and your pitch so you can confidently express yourself clearly and connect with the audience every time you propose a new and innovative idea. All right, so let's jump in. We'll be focusing on two types of pitches. The first is the elevator pitch, which is a shorter and often informal presentation of your idea. The second is the funding got ahead of myself. The second is the funding or sponsor pitch, which is a longer, and it's usually more formal, and of course it has sort of financial or approval decision riding on it. So short, informal, longer, more thorough, and usually there's a decision at some point riding on your second pitch. So let's start with the elevator pitch, though. It's a short, so usually 1 to 3 persuasive summary of your value proposition. The goal is to garner interest in your idea and set up a longer follow-on session that you can provide more details around. Pitches can be used in many situations, during informal interactions or at a staff meeting or with a potential customer or sponsors when you're looking to test the enthusiasm of an idea. The analogy is like a movie preview that gets a potential viewer interested in seeing the film when it's released. You never know when an opportunity to share your idea might arise. Be prepared to give your pitch at any time. Whether your pitch is done in a spontaneous situation, like this elevator scenario, or an arranged meeting, the goals are the same. You want to generate interest. You want to make sure there's some level of understanding of your idea and action from the audience. You want the audience to understand the idea, be interested enough that they're willing to help in whatever form that takes, whether that's time, funding, resources, introductions. Those are the goals of your elevator pitch. While everyone's elevator pitch is unique, they all share a similar underlying structure. An effective elevator pitch contains 3 key components. First, the hook, an opening with the attention-grabbing potential for the audience, followed by the highlights, where you dip into the best of your co-star that's most relevant for your audience, and finally, some sort of request, where you conclude with the next step. Those are the fundamental elements of your elevator pitch. So let's spend a minute on the hook. Begin with a question or a fact or a statement that generates curiosity. You want to get your listeners' attention before jumping into the details of your unique solution. It also serves as a transition to the audience from what they're doing before you started your pitch and gets them into your idea and focused on you and the content. A typical hook consists of a question or statement such as, what if, or imagine if, or 80 million people today suffer from blank, blank, blank. All of those might get somebody's attention, right? That is the focus of your hook, to transition them into paying attention to your pitch. Oops, I gave away my punchline on my next slide. Because one of my favorite movies, Alien, was pitched very successfully, and I was wondering if anybody knew what the pitch was that launched that movie. And even though I enjoyed Aliens a lot, I would advise you not to see the latest release of the last one. It was not nearly as good as the first one. But the first one got launched by a pitch that said, imagine Jaws in a spaceship, right? A wonderful hook that certainly helped them launch the production of that terrific movie. Let me give you another example of an effective hook. A colleague of mine was frustrated because he couldn't get funding from Congress for his first responder project. He had a detection device that responders could wear to tell them if they were heading into toxic situations. For example, they don't often know what's inside a burning warehouse if they've been sent to control, whether it's police or firemen. But this particular device could pick up particles at some amazing level of sensitivity from a mile away. But Congress had turned him down. After listening to this very technical pitch, I asked him what the benefits were to the users. And he said in frustration, well, look, every year, 20 to 30 firemen died needlessly. The minute he said that, we looked at each other and we both knew he had a new hook. Needless to say, he pitched his idea again to Congress and got 2 thumbs up. Congress loves funding projects that save firemen. So not only did he capture their attention, but he talked to them in a currency that they could relate to. All right, so if I move from the hook to the sort of meat of your pitch, this is about co-star. This is where we put in the highlights of the real content that you want to condense down that are most relevant to the audience. Ideally, you'd have time to describe the problem, the opportunity, the unique solution your team can deliver, the results expected from your solution that far surpass the alternatives. If not, emphasize the most relevant elements to your audience. As you can see, co-star is an acronym that hits the highlights of creating a value proposition. Let me spend one quick second on co-star just to make sure we're all on the same page, since this will be a foundational concept going forward. This is what I introduced in the first webinar. So as a reminder, co-star requires you to answer these 6 basic questions. These are foundational to creating your value proposition and your pitch. So you start out considering who's the customer and what is their unmet need. What is the opportunity generated by this customer and unmet need? You follow that by what is your solution to addressing this customer opportunity? Who should be on the team to help you deliver and develop this solution? What is the advantage over the alternatives? Why is your solution the best for addressing this customer opportunity? And what are the expected results, the benefits back to the customer at the end of the day, and also the returns back to the organization? These are the fundamental questions you need to be able to answer to turn your raw idea into a high potential value proposition. And it is this value proposition that you will be using to pitch. All right, so we did the hook and we did the core, and the core comes, or the highlights come out of your co-star. You're going to conclude your pitch with a specific request for next steps. Be clear in your mind how your listeners can help you realize your idea, then ask for their support. Again, money, time, people, instructions, or others. A follow-up meeting is what typically gets requested. You need next steps, otherwise it's a social gathering. It may seem silly, but sometimes innovators get so caught up in delivering a good pitch that they forget the whole reason they were pitching in the first place. Remember what you want and why you were pitching. And why is doing a good pitch so important? Because as Will Rogers once said, you never get a second chance to make a good first impression. All right, so let's talk about some of the tips about how you create a high quality pitch, something that is going to be credible and hopefully memorable to your audience. Adjust to your situation and your audience. Depending on your circumstances, you may have more or less time. No access to your slides, poor acoustics, be in a group setting with an elephant where only half the people will care about your ideas, etc. It's impossible to anticipate and come up with recommendations for all these contingencies. But my advice is to assess the situation, minimize the distractions to you and your audience, and adjust your pitch accordingly. The good news is you only need a small opening to deliver your elevator pitch. Remember, it's only a minute or two. Tell them what they want to hear is my second tip. This tip is like your Wi-Fi. It can be so frustrating when the signal is low, but quite powerful when the connection is strong. For example, don't get too deep into technology for your idea. If you're talking with investors, you'll need to cover ROI. You need to present a strong forecast and clearly articulate how they will get a return on their investment the next 3 to 5 years. If you're talking to leaders in your company, they will also care about ROI. But other decision criteria like significant cost reductions or alignment with the new business strategy or first mover advantage may also resonate well. Share a brief story or anecdote. This is tip number 3. Even in a minute, it can be really helpful. As you prepare your pitch, I suggest collecting stories. Pick the best and look for places to weave them in. For example, while describing the sea and co-star, you could tell a story that makes people cringe on the customer's behalf or laugh at the absurdity of the current situation. While you're describing your solution, tell a story that generates awe for the ingenuity or reverence for your idea. The story should be relevant and dramatic. Stories add emotional texture to the logic of the quantification you've provided. This boosts the overall persuasiveness of your proposal or your pitch. And finally, repeating stories you've heard is good, but personal stories are even better often. They make a point and their authenticity so it helps you connect better with the audience. 4, offer up some provocative facts and figures. A surprising fact can certainly catch the listener's attention, but customer data can change the entire tone and dynamic of the conversation. It's about getting the audience leaning in versus leaning out. If you're able to declare that 6 out of 7 of the customers you've interviewed said they wanted your approach, then your audience will likely lean in and begin working with you to make it happen, or at least agree to follow-up meeting, which is ultimately you're trying to get out of your elevator pitch. You can use metaphors and analogies. People use sports analogies all the time, particularly men, but if you said something like, my business will be the Starbucks of X, Y, and Z, I can easily visualize a trendy, social, ubiquitous business with massive brand recognition. It becomes a helpful shortcut given that you only have a few moments to get your elevator pitch out. It's also helpful to introduce trust building points. So what do I mean by trust building points? These are facts or information that establish credibility with the audience. For example, during last week's staff meeting, I shared the idea with our CEO and he thinks it could play really well in Mexico and South America. Here, the confidence builds for your idea, having already gotten support from a trusted source. Hopefully that gives you an idea. Less is more. That's a good philosophy to remember when you're working on your elevator pitch. You will find you get diminishing returns for extending your pitch. The goal is to get them interested in your idea and enthusiastic enough to take some action in your favor. They may want to hear more in the moment, but if not, don't push it. There's an unwritten agreement about being respectful of people's time when you're pitching them an idea. Be conversational rather than just sort of fretting about doing a perfect pitch performance. Not only will it reduce your nerves, but it adds to the trust-building aspect of the pitch. People are wary of the used car salesman approach that seems canned and insincere. So be yourself. 9, not everybody feels comfortable fist pumping in front of the room. And for some pitches, it's totally inappropriate. However, being enthusiastic about your idea is critical. People are counting on you to deliver on the concept, and they need to believe that you are committed. Use your excitement to get them excited, right? Finally, last of my tips here, gather feedback. In order to continue to evolve your thinking, your pitch, it's really helpful to get feedback from the audience. It allows you to correct any confusion or misconceptions about the idea. So even if they don't agree to a follow-up meeting, you might just ask them, so what'd you think of my idea or my approach? And get their initial reactions. So I actually wanted to take a moment and show you an example of a perfect pitch, if you will. Okay, it's not perfect, nothing's ever perfect, but it is pretty good. And it'll give you a feel of what you might be striving for, particularly if you are spending time talking to an entrepreneur. So imagine this scenario. The video didn't work. All right, hang in there. I gotta hop out.
The video's embedded in there? Is that what?
Yeah, it was. It was. Give me 1 second. Let's see if I can get it just started from here. Sorry, gang. Everybody's favorite moment at a webinar when the technology doesn't quite work.
Wow, look at all that.
What excitement, huh?
Good stuff.
You see my video collection. All right. Let me play it here. Forgive the clumsiness, but you will catch on. Imagine you're the owner of SpinShield and are out looking for investment funds to dramatically scale your startup business. On your way to a meeting, you bump into a potential investor. It's time to seize the moment. Your 1-minute elevator pitch might sound something like this. Our SpinShield product targets the global wind turbine market, which Gartner recently confirmed will grow to $10 billion in the next year, with over 75% currently untapped by any blade performance enhancer. We will be able to deliver our SpinShield solution to customers within 7 days of order and scale our coating process to meet the needs of turbine producers of all types and sizes. We have defensible IP that potential competitors can't work around, so they will have to license our blade coating technologies if they want the 25% increase in efficiency and added environmental protection. We are already establishing agreements with some of the largest manufacturers. We can provide a 10-fold return on investment in 2 years with multiple exit options in 5 years. Do you have time next week to discuss SpinShield in greater detail? Why was this the perfect pitch for a venture capitalist? Let's do a quick inventory of what made this pitch so strong. With regard to the CEO and co-star, he highlighted the fact that wind farming is well known as a growth market. In particular, there's a $10 billion turbine segment, which is largely untapped by blade coating solutions, and he offers third-party confirmation of the market. With regard to the S, he pointed out fast product delivery with minimal inventory requirements, and his coating product had broad appeal, meeting the needs of small, medium, and large turbine manufacturers. With regard to the T, he references established partner base. With regard to the A, he touched on defensible IP and licensing opportunities for recurring revenues from competitors. With regard to the R, he pointed out there would be 10-fold return on investment in 2 years and that multiple exit options exist. And it only took 45 seconds. So be prepared. You never know who you might bump into on an elevator. Well, thank you for hanging in on that one. But I hope you gave you a feel of the key elements and how you build your business case and how you can get out a huge amount of information very quickly and in a compelling manner. That was particularly for venture capitalists, but much of the logic falls the exact same way if you're pitching to a sponsor and sign your own organizations. And you also got a glimpse, again, if you hadn't taken the first webinar around CoStar, how the pieces can come together to help you with your pitch. All right, so let me move on. What are some of the traps that I watch people get into all the time when they're pitching away, trying to get their ideas approved? Lack of empathy. Boy, this one jumps out. You know, I live in Silicon Valley, and it's remarkable how many engineers get themselves into this trouble, because generally engineers are creative problem solvers, but their precision can hinder their pitches. There's an old joke that an engineer would pitch sushi as, ready for it, cold dead fish. Unfortunately, that is not a description that sounds very appealing. All jokes aside, the pitch needs to relate to your audience, and your audience needs to relate to the idea. This is the single biggest trap to avoid. Know your audience and tailor your pitch to their interests and needs. As you may have noticed, this is one of those points I feel the need to make a number of times to reinforce its significance. Watch out for MIGO. MIGO stands for my eyes glaze over. It often comes about when presenters are using too much jargon or getting too technical. In general, you should scan the room to see how your listeners are responding. Are they leaning forward, asking questions, making eye contact, taking notes? All of these would be good signs that they're paying attention. However, if you sense the audience is starting to disengage, looking bored, checking their email, etc., it's time to change your approach or risk not getting approval for your proposal. If you're losing the room, stop telling and start asking questions. Ask the audience provocative questions to get them interacting with you. You can quickly poll the room with questions like, who can tell me what the percentage of customers have XYZ problems? Or use people's names and address them specifically. Karen and Bob, you're experts on XYZ. What do you think of my estimates? Or tell a story or jump to the section the audience is most interested in hearing about. Here's another one I watch unfold. If you're using slides, don't read from them. And don't make it worse by turning your back on the audience. The audience will not appreciate seeing the back of your head with a lack of eye contact, the lack of useful gestures, a robotic presence, and usually no storytelling. Look, an elevator pitch, in summary, can open doors to new possibilities and are equivalent of sort of a resume in a job hunt. You don't get the job from a good resume, but you do get invited to the hiring meeting. All right, let's switch gears and talk a little bit about the funding pitch. With your elevator pitch, you got people to care about you and your idea. With your funding pitch or business proposal, you need to get them to commit time and resources to the realization of your idea. This is about getting commitment. We don't have much time to explore this pitch in great detail, but I do want to make sure the points, the 10 points I raised earlier are absolutely very relevant to your funding pitch as well. For entrepreneurs, pitching is essential for fundraising and is mandatory for getting your startup up and running. This is really obvious and straightforward if you've ever tried to launch a new business, but it's also really important for entrepreneurs as well. This webinar prepares you and your idea to co-star under the bright lights of innovation. Presenting your proposal is showtime. And you need to be at the best to close your deal. You're looking for approval and some investment of time, energy, and resources from decision makers. These tend to be formal meetings requiring more than a short pitch. Like a movie, your presentation will need to tell a gripping story highlighted by sound business case, clear description of your idea, a well-defined plan, and a promising ROI. For your funding pitch, you'll need more detail than the simple elevator pitch. That part that I said, highlight your co-stars, for this, we're going to extend it out a bit. I suggest starting with a 17-slide presentation that builds on your co-star value proposition. As I mentioned before, you'll need to adjust the pitch depending on your audience and purpose. You can certainly combine some of these to make it shorter, or sometimes you can extend them to make it even longer, depending on the focus of your presentation and who ultimately your audience is. but this is a good starter set and shows how you can build upon your co-star. Let me shift now to some exercises you could do to actually improve the quality of your pitch and your presentation. So you might want to try this exercise and videotape yourself delivering your pitch. Persuasive presenting is a communication skill you can improve with practice. Use your smartphone or video recorder to tape yourself delivering the presentation. Pretend you're in front of an audience and present your proposal to the camera as if it's a person. This exercise gives you the opportunity to see yourself as others do and to gain a more objective viewpoint on your strengths and weaknesses as a speaker. Watch the video a few times. The first time through, watch the presenter, watch the presentation in its entirety and see what jumps out at you. What are the moments you notice good and bad about your presentation? Identify what should be repeated and where you should make changes. Go back then and watch it again. In particular, watch for fillers. For people who don't do a great deal of public speaking, one of the biggest challenges to overcome are the use of fillers such as like, you know, so, right. Repeated often enough during your presentation, these verbal crutches, just like I used right there, distract from your message and can undermine your credibility. You might watch one last time with the volume turned off to observe your body language. Body language is a form of nonverbal communication involving the use of gestures, postures, expressions, eye contact, which act as cues to other people. Humans unconsciously send and receive nonverbal signals through body language all the time. In fact, studies show body language can send a message that are more influential than your actual verbal presentation. So as you pitch your idea, your words should match your nonverbal behavior. The underlying key is to use your body language to reinforce what you're saying and to create a positive amplifying effect for the audience. Even if you decide not to try the video exercise, we recommend practicing your presentation out loud at least 5 times. Track the length of your presentation. If you keep going over your target time, keep the critical content and cut the areas that are least important to your audience. For those who need to rush off, thanks for joining us. I hope you found the webinar a rich learning experience, and I wish you all luck with your innovation efforts. If any of you have any questions, please stick around and submit them to Jessica. I'll be happy to provide answers as I can. I want to thank you again all for your time and energy this morning or afternoon or evening, depending on what part of the world you're a part of. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Laszlo. Yes, so if everybody can find the little Q&A icon, or if you want to submit your questions through chat, that's fine. Laszlo and I are glad to answer the questions that we can. Wow, you explained it so well, Laszlo, that we don't have anything left to explain.
Or we have a lot of busy people.
Indeed.
Which I totally understand, or people who are just recording it so they can watch it later, which I know I do occasionally, so I appreciate that. Well, then let's not drag it out. I know you're working really hard, and it is late in the evening, so we should give you some relief.
Well, thank you for jumping on at the beginning of your day, and yeah, we'll see everybody else online. If you have any questions after the webinar, feel free to send them to either Laszlo or myself. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.